Definitely. Yeah. Like as we were saying, we were talking off air, like the crossover between anabolic androgenic steroids and or TRT and brain performance. It's like it's almost like it's I wouldn't call it one and the same, but it's very
Mhm.
closely tied together, right? Because so many guys go on TRT for sexual benefits, but also to perform better functionally,
Right. No,
cognitively.
I agree. And I started with hormone replacement therapy and the whole steroid scene ages ago. And then slowly but steadily, you want to go a little bit
Yeah.
more into entrepreneurship and how to optimize your brain health and brain function. So you start to lean towards nootropic. And, you kind of started with the nootropic side and then you're optimizing your hormone panel and that kind of stuff. So I think inevitably we kind of meet
Right.
halfway and then we put everything together. And then, as an entrepreneur, as a man, you feel 10 times better. A lot more
Definitely.
productive. Yeah.
It's like I always realized that I was missing something. Like when I was focused strictly on nootropics and using like nutraceuticals for brain performance, it's like I could absolutely have the edge. And I realized I always had to have my tests at high levels to feel great. But
Mhm.
injectable testosterone and managing it from the really the uber granular level is a completely different animal in terms of performance.
Your levels are more stable. You're in this
Totally.
perpetual good mood. Your dopamine levels are constantly elevated. And, what we discussed in the previous recording that failed, we should go that way again. I wanted to ask you, like with the nootropics, you notice that, now that you're on TRT, that some of the nootropics you can dose less, except for the cholinergics. So I wanted to know
Right.
what was going on there.
The thing about cholinergics and the gym or like cholinergic nootropics and working out is like, yeah, sometimes it is the extra couple reps or the extra focus on like just like little things like providing more resistance by moving slower, like on your incline press or something that like with nootropics and especially cholinergics, you have a better ability to focus on when your brain is optimized in the kind of cholinergic pathway optimization kind of way. So I feel like when I dose nootropics, especially like the racetams, if there's anything modifying acetylcholine where I have that more optimized, quicker thinking, I feel like my brain is much more zeroed into what I'm doing in my workout around my goals.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And did you notice that, like, if you
It's
if you
awesome.
take some of the cholinergics around training, that the workout performance is now more substantially increased compared to before when you weren't on testosterone replacement therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I always noticed some racetams, particularly phenylpiracetam and phenylpiracetam hydrazide, because acetylcholine. It's funny that you mentioned that because not many people think about that. They just think about it strictly from the brain perspective, but it is
Mhm.
necessary for muscular contraction. And so, like, I think that's probably why some of the racetams are like banned in USADA and like
Yeah.
Olympic sports and stuff because they do facilitate muscular contraction.
That's how I basically got introduced to nootropics because I wanted to figure out, better ways to train harder. And then alpha GPC and agmatine and some of the race attempts, people were discussing that as a potential pre-workout method to increase muscular contraction. So I started experimenting with alpha GPC and agmatine sulfate and paracetam here and there. And then, that's kind of my gateway drug into exploring more nootropics, the
Right.
dihexa and the new pept and all the other stuff that really help with cognitive function because, you
Yeah.
have to get introduced with this stuff at one point. And, the bodybuilding space is very limited. It's like steroids and chicken and rice and heavy duty trading. But the nootropics, that's only something that has been introduced for the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
like that's how you kind of get introduced to it. And what I noticed myself now that I'm off steroids, that the dosages of cholinergics can be lower, probably also because I
Mm.
train less intense. But
Right.
my caffeine intake and some of the stimulants, I can actually dose higher. I need to dose them higher to really get into that flow state and really be productive during work. Because as far as I can tell from the scientific literature, testosterone and some of the other steroids actually make you more susceptible to some of the stimulants, especially caffeine. That's actually quite
Mhm.
documented, well documented.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you mentioned it yourself in the previous recording that caffeine and most of the other nootropics you can actually dose lower than before. Now that you're on
Yeah,
TRT.
on TRT, absolutely. Like, it's just there's a place where I want to feel most of the time, especially if I'm doing productive work and or
Mhm.
going to the gym. And it's like on TRT, I can reach that in some cases without using nootropics, which I find really
Hmm.
interesting. But at the same time, I just require lower doses of the methylxanthine class, teacrine, dynamine, theobromine, and other kind of dopamine release agents. And that is probably because of the neurotransmitter effects of having high testosterone.
Right. I think so. Yeah, you're always in this perpetually state of increased dopamine levels. And I noticed that in my own
Right.
comment section, there's like a couple naturals that want to know about nootropics. And then I mentioned that I used to take modafinil, 50 milligrams per day. People are like, that's it? That low? And I think now if I were to add the modafinil back
Yeah.
in, I probably need like 75 or 100 milligrams to get the same effect as 50 milligrams on TRT or on a
Right.
steroid cycle. Of course, now
Yeah.
I can't take it because
Right.
if you dive into the literature of modafinil in regards to fertility, it's terrible. It's like one of the
Fertility.
worst
Yeah.
drugs
Yeah.
for your fertility. So
Oh
yeah,
man.
unfortunately, yeah, not too many nootropics for me right now. Only the over the counter ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird that your metabolism kind of changes when you're on TRT, and then you have to kind of readjust on how to dose your nootropics in your like sweet spot dosages.
Right. It's a good point, right? Because like I'm always preaching, like screaming from the rooftops to guys like, hey, look, if you're not getting a particular response from nootropics, you must look at why you're even taking them to begin with. Like, are you fatigued? And is that part of it? Yeah, I think what's happened, it's like you're a little bit behind now. Huh. Let's see if
Yeah,
you
I think my connection doesn't have enough nootropics on it.
Yes, I'm always preaching to people like make sure your baseline is straight, right? So and this kind of bleeds this topic bleeds into that like if your baseline is really really good and you wake up feeling pretty good and throughout the day you have good energy because you're working on everything relative to that,
Mhm.
uh testosterone, I don't know, analyzing biomarkers, seeing what's wrong, maybe your B12 is below 500 or something, you need to work on that, then it changes the way that you respond to nootropics and you usually require less of them.
Yeah, I think if you optimize a lot of these small things, then your response and your productivity overall will be a lot better. That's why I never really believe in just using one nootropic or one edge to get your TRT or HRT done. I think if you can optimize all these little vectors, it's kind of like
Definitely.
the soundboard, right, of the audio mixer. So you have like all these little audio
Yeah.
streams that you can kind of manipulate and adjust and the bass a little bit more, and once you start doing that, you get the perfect sound. But with us, you get like the perfect flow state and the well-being and entrepreneurship and productivity. It takes a while though. It takes a while
Yeah.
though to get there. But once you're there, man, it's like productivity galore.
Everybody should like work to dial in their protocol, whatever it is, whether nootropics, TRT, or both, in a
Mhm.
way which like you're just like ultra dialed in.
I saw that you started that new series, Smart Drugs or Not. Who's
Yes.
next on this series? I like the one from Elon Musk. That was a good one.
Probably Jeff Bezos because
Yeah. Mhm.
there's some sketchy footage of that guy out there, man. And I think he's like, his eyes do this strange thing where like they are opened like, one of those chicks who actually can open their eyes like bulge their eyeballs out. And so like, I
Mhm.
don't know, man. I think that dude is on some hardcore stimulants. Whereas like with Elon, he's naturally brilliant and maybe he's sped up or he's taking something to slow down a little bit too. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
he needs a whole lot of intervention, but like, a guy like Bezos, probably does.
I think Bezos is on TRT and stuff as well. He's on testosterone replacement therapy. He looks pretty jacked. Every time you see some pictures of him.